This is Autoline After Hours with John McElroy and Gary Vasilash, episode 532 for November 5th of 2020. Lucid Motors would love to become the next Tesla. Watch Autoline After Hours live at Autoline.tv every Thursday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. That's 12 p.m. Pacific. You can subscribe to this podcast for free by searching for Autoline in iTunes, Stitcher, or YouTube.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Hyundai, Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Mr. Gary.
John, how are you?
I'm doing great. I can't wait for the show to get going.
It's a great show. So I won't tell you that this is the 125th anniversary of the Selden patent. We will move right on, and let's bring in Rain No of Core 77.
Hi guys, thank you for having me.
Rain, great to have you on the show.
Thanks.
So just quick before we move along, Core 77 for those who don't know about it.
We are a design-focused publication. We started by a bunch of people who have backgrounds in industrial design, as I do. So out of all the design subfields, auto design is sort of the rock star field. If you go to med school and you're the best, you become a neurosurgeon. If you go to design school and you're the best, you become an auto designer.
Right on, man. We believe with that. And of course, the reason we wanted you on is because of our guests today. Let's bring them up. We've got Peter Rawlinson, the CEO and CTO of Lucid Motors, as well as Derek Jenkins, the Vice President of Design for Lucid. Great to have the both of you on the show, and thanks for making the time available to do it.
Great to be here.
Yeah, thank you, John.
So much to talk about. I'll kick off the discussion. Let's pretend I'm somebody who's in the market for a luxury electric car. Why should I buy a Lucid Air instead of a Tesla Model S? And let's say I'm an investor as well who wants to cash in on the EV craze. Why should I invest in Lucid instead of anybody else? Peter, why don't we start with you?
Well, I think that Lucid is a true luxury proposition. We are creating a car here which is really an electric Mercedes S-Class competitor. And we've been very consistent with that messaging throughout. If you look at the luxury space, it's dominated by the grande automakers, particularly the Germans, Mercedes, Audi, BMW, Porsche. Lexus is there as well, and Jaguar. And they have one thing in common. All these vehicles are gasoline. So, the conclusion is there's no real EV choice for the consumer in the true luxury space. And I'm not being dismissive of Tesla. I think Tesla have done an outstanding job. The cars are beautifully engineered. They're disruptive. They're high-tech. They're expertly created. But they're not really playing in the true luxury arena. And, this is a huge market worldwide. And I know a lot of people who 10 years ago wouldn't countenance an electric car, who perhaps are Mercedes S-Class customers. And Tesla's changed all that. They want a true luxury electric car. And this is it behind me. We're going to make the best car in the world, an EV with over 500 miles range. Lucid Air is going into production in our purpose-built factory in Arizona, spring next year. It's really close.
And Peter, I'm glad you pointed that out. It's not a virtual background behind you. You've got a real property.
You see the beast in its natural environment, the studio here in headquarters in Silicon Valley. And what we have here is a great fusion, real art piece car in an environment which is inspired by California design sensibility and architectural influence. There's more than a touch of mid-century modern in our studios. So we will own the whole retail experience through our stores direct to the customer. And I think that this is something to be seen. This is our first store here, our first studio in headquarters in Silicon Valley that I'm sitting in today. And we have recently opened our flagship store in Beverly Hills on Wilshire Boulevard. And this Saturday, Derek and I are splitting, conquering and dividing. We open 2 new stores, one in Beverly Hills, and Derek's going to attend that, and one here in Valley Fair, San Jose, and I'm going to attend that opening.
That's great. So Derek, same question to you. If I'm in the market, why should I go with an Air instead of an S?
Yeah, I think Peter said it well. You know, we're really positioning the brand, the experience, the design of the vehicle, the performance range to be a luxury play. You know, 98% of the global luxury market today is still internal combustion, 98%. So that tells me there's a lot of customers out there that have not yet found the right luxury product for them. And I think that's because no one's been focusing on that. And again, that's not a knock to our competitors. That just means there's a lot of work to do. Our whole mission is to accelerate this expansion of EV and get as many people driving electric as possible. And we believe to do that, you have to just wow the consumer. You have to give amazing range. You have to give incredible performance. You have to have an amazing connected digital experience. You have to have the tactile materials and fit and finish to really be luxury. And if you do those things well, I think you will bring some of those 98% to EV. And above all that, you can do it and be completely sustainable. So what we're doing is eliminating any and all compromise for those internal combustion consumers to come over to electric.
Peter, maybe we jumped the gun here a little bit, and so we're talking about the Lucid Air as though everybody knows what the Lucid Air is. How about giving us a capsule summary of what this vehicle that you guys have created is all about? What are its characteristics? What are the capabilities? What are, just tell us about the car.
Sure, Gary. So we set out a few years ago to create the very best electric car, the best car in the world, and to really take electrification technology to a whole new level. And the result is our very first product, the Lucid Air luxury class sedan, which we're putting into production next spring. And the Lucid Air has been independently tested and has an EPA estimated range capability of 517 miles. This is a game changer. And it's also been independently tested in real world tests, delivering over 100 miles more than a Tesla Long Range Plus in back-to-back environments, 65, 70 miles an hour on the freeway with the air conditioning on. In fact, Motor Trend magazine did a test, a real-world test, and the car achieved 490 miles in that real-world test at relatively high speed and relatively inclement conditions, quite hot conditions. So it's a game changer in terms of range. It's also a game changer in terms of what we call the space concept. We've changed the way a car is designed around the potential of electrification. And we've done that by shrinking, by reducing in size, by minimizing the size of the electric powertrain. And this shrinking of the electric powertrain has freed up a lot more space inside the car. So we can have a car on the outside, which is more compact, and on the inside, more spacious, more comfortable, and more luxurious. So externally, our car is smaller than Tesla Model S, and it's smaller than Porsche Taycan. But people don't realize that because they see pictures of this really spacious, sort of Maybach-esque interior and think it's a huge car, and it's not. And, a while back, I was chief engineer at Lotus Engineering. And, there's a passion for compact nimbleness at Lotus. And, a lot of that's rubbed off on me to have a car which is more compact on the outside, more sporty to drive, more maneuverable, and actually more practical in a big city. But then endowed with this interior space, which actually surpasses that of a long wheelbase S-Class Mercedes. No one's ever done this before. And how have we been able to achieve this? By doing all the technology in-house, all the drivetrain technology. And our real holy grail that we've chased is the efficiency. And what I mean by efficiency is miles per kilowatt hour. Because anyone can achieve range by stuffing a humongous battery pack in there. That's not smart. That's not smart range. And what we've done is, with a more modest battery size, get this over 500-mile range with our own battery technology, achieving over 4.5 miles per kilowatt hour. And no one else is even close to that.
Can I jump in with a question on design, or are we going to wait to the middle?
No, go right ahead. No.
Okay. So
Yes, please.
this is a question for both Peter and Derek. Peter, when you arrived at Tesla, famously for car nerds, the car had already been designed, and you were tasked with retrofitting the engineering into the shape, which, for those of you not familiar with the product design world, it's like saying, here's a used bar of soap. Can you make the mechanics for a hairdryer fit into this? When you got to Lucid, I'm assuming that was not the case. How did you and Derek work out the sort of interplay between design and engineering?
That's a very, very erudite sort of observation, Rain. Yeah, I mean, Model S had been designed in the studio, so the shape, the external shape, was pretty well fixed. And Franz von Holzhausen did a great job. But my job, and it was quite an interesting intellectual challenge, was to fit the technology and the engineering into that predetermined exterior shape. And that was a very interesting 3D puzzle to solve. I think we didn't do a bad job. But if you look at Tesla Model S, actually the driver position is quite far rearward. It's significantly further back from the front axle line compared with something like an Audi A6. And that was driven entirely by studio design sensibility, this traditional cowl-back, long hood sort of notion of proportion. And I'll let Derek speak to that. So we changed all that with Lucid Air. We designed the car from the inside out. When I reached out to Derek, I think this notion was met with a degree of skepticism, because it broke all the rules of proportion and studio design. This notion that we can have a long cabin, a shorter hood, and a more compact car, but with a long wheelbase. Derek, do you want to add to that? Your concern when you first met me?
Yeah, no, I mean, we had that discussion very early on, and what was, so nice about this is that we knew that it was going to be a very collaborative thing, and we had certain ambitions with respect to space, aerodynamic efficiency, weight, all kind of pushing us towards this efficiency and performance aspect. And if you really, step back and look at automotive design and how the vehicle's drivetrain affects the proportions and the telltale design elements of any vehicle. A large front engine vehicle has a certain look and aesthetic. A mid-engine vehicle to a rear engine vehicle, there's telltale proportional differences if it's a truly great design that speak to that. And I've in talking with Peter and thinking about how we wanted to design this vehicle, we really had to be consequent with how we thought about the proportions of the car, where we could take advantage of the electrification in our incredibly compact drivetrain components and optimize that cabin space, meaning the cabin had to be very long, the hood is going to be very short. Early on, the thinking was, well, gosh, all luxury cars have long hoods and big grills and a cab rearward aesthetic, and that tells people it's luxury. But once we accepted the fact that, yeah, well, that's luxury and performance in the past, you really have to embrace where we're going in the future. And no longer having a long hood is no longer telling you anything except your car's low tech. And so we had to kind of accept that and move towards this new proportion. Same topic on grills and large air intakes. That tells people your high performance in the past. Where we're going with electrification is streamlined, aerodynamic, minimal, and really effortlessly sleek, effortlessly powerful and high performance. And that's not about large air intakes anymore. So we really had to embrace that. And that really drove the aesthetic. It's a truly form function aesthetic. And I think Peter and I are both very proud of that, because electric cars are just now really getting their footing, and the design language of this new era of electrification is in its infancy. And so this is going to grow and evolve and transform. And I really believe as consumers see the benefits and the experience of electrification, they'll embrace newer and newer aesthetic evolution. And that's thrilling. You know, that's what all designers dream of, is rapid change in design.
And then we added our own headlight technology in, which formed very much part of the design aesthetic, Derek.
That's right. The lighting technology, our in-house team, we have an incredible lighting team in-house, and they introduced the micro lens array technology, which is a wafer type of lens, almost like an insect lens. And that allows us to have about a 22 millimeter lighting aperture. Is going to be the slimmest in the industry. And it's very accurate light distribution and very energy efficient. So it serves multiple purposes. And we embrace that and let that lead the design identity of the front of the car, moving away from kind of the angry eye aesthetic of past lighting towards something more digital, minimal, linear, but still adorned with nice materials and elegant.
We have literally thousands of light channels in this lighting technology, which is unique to us, developed 100% in-house. And the channels can digitally steer. So we've not got elements of the lights which literally rotate, but they can digitally steer linked to the direction of the car. This is brand new technology, and it's state of the art. No one's done that. It's 100% created in-house. And it really creates a signature, the face of the car, which is unusual and makes the car aesthetic and acquired taste. And it grows on you.
When you say the lights can digitally rotate, do you mean that when you're rounding a corner that the lights will track into that direction?
Yes, yeah, with digital channels. They don't actually rotate. It just there's about 9,000 different light channels, and the computer control which ones are used.
Derek, I don't want to lose this point that you mentioned about the aero of the vehicle. Now, you guys have a 0.21 coefficient of drag. How did you do that? I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, that's again a great question. I think, you know, we had pretty lofty ambitions early on, and I think in many ways we even exceeded what we were hoping for. And you know, there's some fundamental things we did to achieve that. The fundamentals are back to the architecture. We kept the car fairly compact. You know, we're narrower than a Tesla Model S. That helps frontal area. We're lower than a Tesla Model S. That helps frontal area and flow. We have a very fast front windscreen and a very seamless transition from windscreen to roof. A lot of aero management. So the ducting you see on the front of the car, on the hood, those are air vents that come in just at the top of the headlights under the light blade, and that eliminates high pressure buildup and helps flow over the hood and just past the rear view mirror. We also have vents on the sides of the cars to manage airflow around the front corner and down the body side of the car. But there's also incredible features like our front air intake. We have this vortex induction that feeds our front radiator cooling, and it allows us to take in far less air. It distributes the air more evenly over the radiator surface, and so if the car is taking in less air, that's less drag on the overall car. And then finally, it's just fine tuning. You know, there's incremental wins towards drag coefficient on every square millimeter of this car, and that has primarily been achieved through close collaboration between the mechanical engineering team, the design team, and the aerodynamics and a thermal management team. And it's just it's a synced up thinking that is how we operate here at Lucid. That's quite different than I've experienced in my past programs.
And just as a quick follow-up, how important is the aero to the range that you mentioned, Peter?
So we've got about 17% more efficiency than the industry leader, which is Tesla, and we've got lab data back to back. So we can go 17% further for a given size battery than Tesla long range Model S. Of that 17%, about 2% is attributable to aero, and 15% to the efficiency of our drivetrain. And let me just sort of add to the synopsis that Derek provided on the aero. There are sort of three elements which define the impact of aero upon range and efficiency. One is CD, coefficient of drag, which is a dimensionless number. The next one is A, the area of the car, and the third one are the duct losses. And those usually you measure a CD with the ducts closed. You don't measure the duct losses, but they affect real world range. So our CD is 0.21, that's world class. Our frontal area is smaller than the competition because our car is smaller than the competition. We're narrower and lower than a Model S. We're actually shorter as well. And then the third thing is we've got these really efficient ducts, which means that our real world range is enhanced. And if you think of this vortex system that we've got, a lot of people are familiar with the vortex in a certain brand of British vacuum cleaner, which has got clear plastic. You see the vortex. Can you imagine two of those vortices lying flat? And that's behind that little that narrow air intake at the front of the car, and it just speeds the air up into a vortex rotating this way, and then it fires over the area of the radiators. So what we get is a more even distribution of air across the radiator. So we can either have more cooling, or we can have the same amount of cooling with smaller radiators, which gives us a smaller nose, which gives us a better aerodynamics, which means we don't need so much cooling in the first place and create a beneficial circle.
Hey, I've got to jump in right now. We're going to take a quick commercial break. We'll be back talking all about Lucid and the Air with Peter and Derek. But first, a shout out to our new sponsor, Hyundai.
Where is the car key? I don't understand. Which hole has the car key in it?
Come on, I don't want to be late to this.
You're killing me, man.
The all-new Elantra with Hyundai Digital Key.
All right, we're back. Rain, we got the reins of the show right now.
I'm sorry, you broke up. Can you say that again, please, John?
Yeah, go ahead. You got a question?
Oh, sure. I've got tons. Let's see. I want to start with Derek. So Derek, for those who don't know your background, you were a self-described surfer kid from Huntington Beach, California. You grew up in the car culture, fell in love with weird cars like the Myers-Manx, the Volkswagen Thing. You get into Art Center, which is like the MIT of auto design schools. Get an internship at Porsche and find yourself at Audi, where you spend the next 7 years, and I think another 8 or 9 at VW. VW and Audi are not, or in the 80s and 90s, they were not the global powerhouses they were today, but they're established long story brands with a history, and there's a culture there that you have to kind of fit into. After that, you go to Mazda, which, while not as established as VW and Audi, also has a sort of DNA. Then you take the leap to Lucid, which has no history in terms of a brand identity or visual DNA. How do you start designing something like this from scratch? Peter's got an engineering vision. How do you match that on the design front?
Right. Yeah, I mean, that, quite frankly, that was kind of the big draw for me personally, because I had reached a point in my career where I felt like I had been involved in some great programs. I've been super fortunate to work for such storied companies that do truly have a kind of DNA, and that was a real growth and training experience. But I was at the point where I felt like the auto industry is on the verge of a massive change, and so many of the rules and things that are put in place have less and less meaning in this new era that we're upon. And so coming to Lucid was this opportunity to kind of really focus in on technology, focus in on that change that's happening, look at where the customers are going and what's making them tick and why, and how we can get more customers fascinated with electrification. So in many ways, that became the foundation. And now we coupled that with a big focus on kind of our California origin story. So, you know, I'm born and raised in California. I've, of course, worked all over the world, but somehow I always end up back here. And you know, Peter's been in California for a long time and been such a huge part of technology and the big shift that's happened here. And so we started to build on that California DNA of kind of design and creativity and landscape and lifestyle, coupled with technology and innovation and change in our industry. And that DNA became very much a metaphor for our aesthetic. How can we coin an aesthetic, coin a brand look and feel that has this nice balance of a human experience, nature, efficiency, sustainability on one end, but it's high tech and it's future facing. It's about efficiency and technology and innovation. If you get the balance of those two things, I think that's a really nice way to look at design and really nice character that is representative of what we've been trying to bring into the look and feel and tone and personality of Lucid as a brand. And we see that as quite different from let's say some of the German brands or some of our direct EV competitors. It's a different look and feel.
I've got a question here from one of our viewers. Well, I'll be peppering the whole show with viewer questions. Joey's cleaning lady wants to go back and talk about the lighting. He wants to know, fiber optic with light pipes or actually rotating the LEDs?
We're not rotating the LEDs. The LEDs behind light channels, and we can actually switch on which set are operational. They have individual directions. So
Peter,
there's no rotating parts.
Okay, I thought that that approach that you're using is legal in Europe, but not legal in the U.S. Or have you gotten the blessing of NHTSA to do it?
It's absolutely okay. And we only have to use it if we switch that software on.
Peter, you mentioned earlier in the show the Lucid space concept and how this has had an effect throughout the design of the vehicle, inside and outside of the vehicle. Explain to us what this is and how this is different from what other EV manufacturers are doing.
Yeah, it's based upon the miniaturization of our drive units. We've managed to achieve over 40 horsepower per litre with our complete drive unit. And that's not just at motor level, that's 4 elements in that drive unit: motor, inverter, differential, and reduction gear set. And we've got an extreme miniaturizer, and we surely could do something with that miniaturization. So what we've been able to do is give the space that we've won through that miniaturization to extra cabin space to give more legroom and comfort to the interior. So we've got a car which is shorter than a Taycan, shorter than a Tesla Model S, but it's got more interior cabin length than a long wheelbase S-Class Mercedes. And we've also been able to create this incredible space in the front as well, the front trunk, as a result of that miniaturization. And the miniaturization helps in other ways, because if you've got a smaller incompressible mass drive unit, it gives you more free crush space. And this is really important. It's important for Lucid Air, but it's got incredible applications to the mass market in the future, because my passion is that this technology that we're developing for the car behind me here cascades down in the future to smaller cars. Can you imagine a super miniaturized unit using 40 horsepower per litre? You get 100 horsepower for a family car. It'd be literally, at that ratio, it would be about 2.5 litres. It would be this size. And that means that you could actually save lives. You could have less incompressible space and more free crush space, more free crumple space, and you'd get a softer crash pulse as a result. So there are many profound advantages in pursuing this.
But we shouldn't.
If I could also just add to that, I think one of the things that's so fascinating about the space concept discussion is, if you look at the auto industry today, and let's just look at the luxury sedans, you got your small size, your medium size, and your long size, and each one, you go from the small one to the medium one. The motor gets bigger, the cabin gets bigger, the trunk gets bigger. You go from the medium to the top one. Again, the motor gets bigger, the cabin gets bigger, the trunk. So there's a set format on the market today that all sedans are derived from. And it's just been a constant evolution for about 45 years. If you go back to kind of the 60s and 70s, you can see the early DNA of what became the modern sedan. It's entirely born out of internal combustion. And what we're talking about with the space concept is a break from that. It's a shift where now we can give you a medium-sized car with full-size car interior space, SUV levels of storage space, yet hypercar levels of performance. So the equation is now completely shifted. All those old rules are out the window. That's what's so fascinating about the discussion around the space concept, because it's really limitless what you can bring to a product.
And it's important to recognise that our advantage of being a startup, because we bet the house on this, I bet the house on it. The whole notion of executing the space concept was based upon the premise that we'd be able to achieve something that no one's ever achieved, that level of miniaturization. If we hadn't been able to miniaturize, the car wouldn't have worked. And yet we had to pursue the design of the car, the studio design, the whole layout of the ergonomic package and the people package, the position of H points, eye ellipses, all the legal around that occupant package, on the premise that we'd be able to shrink and miniaturize our powertrain. And we were doing that in parallel, in good faith that we would be able to achieve that. Now, that would have been too big a risk. If I'd been back at Jaguar, I don't think they'd have ever let me proceed with such an ambitious plan. But it all came together, and the result is, I think, the next generation car. But I do want to stress something here. We haven't sold a single car yet. I'm very proud of what the team's achieved to date with all this technology, but we do approach the future with humility because we haven't got it in production yet. The next 5-6 months will define us as a company as we move towards manufacturing, and the whole company is in this transition period now. I'm very proud of our engineering expertise, planning and working like crazy to ensure that we get the smoothest transition now to getting our new factory up and running in a very organized manner. You see the factory here. This is the new factory we've built in Arizona. It's midway between Phoenix and Tucson. Here you see the pilot line we put in September for finishing our beta prototypes. We've just finished building about 80 beta prototypes. Right now in the factory, that line has completed its job, and we're doing something called TTO, which is called tooling tryout. And that's where all the robots in our body shop get fine. There's the robots, and they're all fine-tuned with feeling their way around the parts, the stampings, the extrusions, and the castings that they're going to assemble for production. And so it's the last 1/10 of a millimeter adjustment on those robots' positioning that's currently underway, and then we'll transition later this month, in the next couple of weeks, towards getting our state-of-the-art paint shop operational. That's the last week in November, and then that will lead to creating our pre-production cars. We'll make up to about 100 of those, starting at the end of this year. And then hopefully we'll get some of those cars in the hands of the press early next year. That's the plan.
Just one thing about the miniaturization. So Derek, you were mentioning that as cars get bigger, what's under the hood gets bigger, and it also tends to result in higher levels of performance. Now, even though you have a small package, are you sacrificing 0 to 60 times, for example?
No, and that's again kind of speaks to the miniaturization of technology, and we've seen this obviously throughout our lives in consumer goods, where things tend to get more compact, yet somehow more efficient and oftentimes exponentially more powerful relative to their size, and that's what's happening now to the auto industry, and that's what's happening with the Lucid Air drivetrain and components. They've gone down in size and overall volume, but they've gone up in performance capability and output, yet improving efficiency. And so, that's what's so incredibly exciting about this shift.
And the other thing that's really important I should emphasize is there's sort of three breakthroughs with our powertrain. One is the miniaturization that Derek covered. The other is efficiency. But the other point is that we've designed it to be truly mass producible, because my passion is that this technology finds its way into more affordable echelons of the car market. And that's super important, because the cars, the luxury car that we create today will lead the way, and the efficiency will drive down costs. Because if we can do 17 miles further, 17% further for a given amount of energy, we can go the same distance with 17% less batteries. And the battery is the most expensive element of electric car. I think we've addressed range anxiety with over 500 miles range in this car, but the real barrier to the more widespread adoption of electric cars is affordability. And efficiency is one of those drivers that's going to push the price down.
Hey, I've got to jump in right here again. We're going to take another quick commercial break. This time, a shout out to our good friends at Borg Warner.
The world is changing at an ever-increasing pace. No matter what the mode of transportation, there is always the need for an efficient propulsion system. And that's exactly what Borg Warner has been doing since the earliest days of the automotive industry. We create innovative mobility technologies that reduce energy consumption and emissions while improving performance. Our proven track record has made us an industry leader in forward-looking propulsion solutions for combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles.
All right, we're back talking all things about Lucid and Lucid Air with Derek and Peter here. I've got a question from Sven for you guys. Wants to know, what chip do you use for your driver assistance or autonomous driving? And are there any plans to add fun features such as Sentry mode, video games, streaming, and maybe even Easter eggs?
Well, we're working with a world-class chip supplier. I think that I'm not prepared to disclose who that is, but it's one of the usual suspects. Absolutely, all those features I'd love to do. We're actually having regular reviews on such matters, aren't we, Derek?
Yeah, I mean, all of the connected features, both outside the vehicle through our consumer vehicle application, where you can monitor preset navigation, check charge status, precondition the vehicle. We're looking at security features as well to be able to monitor the vehicle through the application. And then inside the car, first and foremost, we're going to create a system that is very elegant and super intuitive and easy to use. So we're trying to take complexity out of the cockpit and really make it as easy to use, low learning curve, and as attractive and appealing as possible, first and foremost. Then we're going to layer in a whole range of features, some of which will be in at start of production, and some of which we will do through over-the-air updates. And of course, that will include a lot of audio, streaming content, and long-term video content, as well as things like gaming and so on. So definitely a big part of our user experience plan going forward.
I've got another question about design, if I can jump in.
Yeah.
So I think engineering kind of has an advantage over design in that the technology that Peter's working on, it sounds like it's a couple years ahead of what everyone else has got, and that's fine. He can continue working on that and roll that out, and it's not going to scare people away. If anything, they'll be impressed. From the design standpoint, you can't really design anything that's so radical on the level of Peter's engineering that it's going to freak people out. There's a certain amount of restraint that's required. Now that you're at this new company that doesn't have any sort of history, how do you manage that? How do you sort of dial it back?
That's a great question, because, I think when you start a project like that, part of you is like, okay, we're going to do the most advanced futuristic thing. It's going to be from a science fiction movie. And there's this temptation to do that. And it's quite frankly not a difficult thing to do. Your bigger risk there is, as you say, is it's going to be like, well, that, the customer or your target customer may be like, well, that's interesting, but I don't want it in my driveway. And so trying to find that balance in design is really important, where for Lucid, and part of our DNA was to create something that's striking and high tech, but is also like initially appealing to the consumer. So they see something that is still reminiscent of a vehicle. It's elegant, it's sleek, it looks fast, it looks high tech, but it's also broad. It has a degree of broad appeal. And so obviously that's not an easy thing to do, especially to make something that's somewhat original and not derivative of cars on the road today. And it's just through a lot of iteration, a lot of soul searching, and kind of really feeling out where we want to position the vehicle. And keep in mind, the Lucid Air is just the first iteration of the Lucid look and feel. We're already working on our SUV, and we're looking at our long-term roadmap into the future. And that aesthetic is, of course, is going to evolve. One thing it won't be just a carbon copy of each other, scaled up, scaled down, reproportioned. Each one's going to have an evolution of the Lucid look and feel.
Peter, I want to ask you a question about your ADAS technology. So you have a suite of the Dream Drive ADAS system that uses cameras, ultrasonics, radar, LiDAR. Others are claiming that they have self-driving without all of those sensors. So what is it that your suite of sensors can allow you to do with the vehicle?
Well, I think others are claiming they can, and actually achieving a great degree of self-driving without LiDAR. I think Tesla doesn't ascribe to LiDAR. I think that LiDAR gives you a lot of topological definition. But the downside is that in certain light conditions, it's pretty limited in fog and rainy conditions and certain light conditions. Of course, where the light doesn't go through. So I believe in a multi-layered approach. So we fuse the sensing from the cameras, the radar, and the LiDAR. We've got 120-degree solid-state LiDAR at the front. We've got 32 sensors, so it's a very comprehensive sensing suite. So we will be ahead in terms of the degree of sensing that we'll endow the car with. 14 cameras, including a driver monitoring camera. Where we've got to play catch up is with big data collection, where clearly we're behind, and on the software side. So we'll launch with a level 2+, and we will scurry to play catch up to get to level 3 as soon as possible after launch of the car, and we'll be able to upgrade the car with over-the-air upgrades after start of production. So I take a pretty nuanced view of that. I mean, there's a great sort of analogy in the human body. We rely upon inputs, visual inputs, and inner ear inputs for our sense of balance, and that's a system which has served us well over the ages. And so I believe that there's a value in fusing this more advanced topological data that you can get with LiDAR, although it is hampered by certain light and dampness conditions.
Hey, Peter, the more I hear both of you talk, really, I'm very impressed by the amount of technology that you're developing in-house. I'd like to dive into that topic a little bit more. We've got a great question here from Chase Drum, who would like you to talk about Ativa, which is the original name of the company's involvement in Formula E.
Huh?
You're doing, I guess, the battery pack design, and can you share any upcoming changes regarding those? But I'm just curious, what all are you guys doing with Formula E?
Yeah, so Ativa was the original name of our company. I joined the company. There were a couple of conditions, one of which was we changed the name. I didn't think we were going to sell many cars called Ativas. So we did change the name, and now people think, what are you smoking? It's called Lucid. It's very California. So Ativa is our original name of our company, and we've actually kept it, and we're using it as our technology service provider. Ativa's been around since late 2007. The company has got a rich history in battery technology. We've got over 20 million miles accrued safe miles on buses in the Far East. And under our Ativa banner, we've developed and engineered and tested and created and manufacture actually in this very building the battery pack which powers all 24 cars on the grid of that electric world championship. And we're very proud of the technology that we've developed there. Now, that technology partially transfers very well to road cars. Some of it's relevant, some of it's less so. If you look at the actual cell chemistry, it's very different because it's not an energy dense chemistry. It's not really a power cell either. It's kind of if I took the athletics comparison, it's not a 100-meter runner and it's not a marathon. It's more like a 1500-meter type cell chemistry, as it were. But for Lucid Air, we need more the 10,000-meter type physiology. So we have a different cell chemistry. But if you look at all the learning from the rest of that pack, advanced cooling systems, the way we've used the cells together collectively and integrated them in a way which reduces internal impedance of the pack, which is critical for pack efficiency, and the way we've architected the whole modularity of that pack, all of that knowledge has been transferred directly into Lucid Air. And it is true to say that Lucid Air battery is the DNA cousin of everything that we've learnt in World Championship motorsport. And now, of course, the battery pack, and there you see it, there's this trapezium shape. And we developed this trapezium shape for the race cars that would fit into the aero package and the structural package of the monocoque of the car. Because I passionately believe a battery pack can be so more than just a repository of storage of energy. It should be part of the functionality of the vehicle. So the shape of the pack for Lucid Air is entirely different, but its functionality is very similar. It contributes very much to the structural integrity of the car, its structural rigidity, its modal performance, there you see it. And also it contributes as an integral part of the crash architecture to protect occupants and enhance the integrity of the occupant's safety cell. Now, we've gone for a modular pack design. It's 924 volt, ultra high voltage, which makes the whole car much more efficient. It means that we can charge up to 20 miles in 1 minute, but that's at our optimum state of charge. You can't do that, right? You can't suddenly say, well, if I can do 20 miles in 1 minute, I can do 200 miles in 10 minutes. It doesn't work like that. But we can get 300 miles just in 20 minutes, and this is unprecedented. We very recently tested at over 300 kilowatts with an Electrify America outlet, and the Electrify America are amazed. What is that's on our network charging that we had that rate of charge? Oh, it's a Lucid Air. And their technical director rang my VP of hardware immediately to congratulate him. This happened just last week. So we've got a pack which charges faster than anything else. We've got a pack which has truly got the race car DNA in it. Now, there's one thing I would like to cover here is there's a lot of excitement in some people's eyes about the potential for cell to pack design and not going through a modular design, which we've determined is the most appropriate for us. There's nothing new about cell to pack. It's actually something I looked at when I was chief engineer on Model S back in 2009 and decided not to do cell to pack for Model S for good reason. And those reasons still apply today. I think if you're going to make truly mass produce by the hundreds of thousands, a car which is smaller and where cost effectiveness is absolutely paramount, and there's not going to be different variants of that pack for different range or ergonomic configurations, there is potentially an advantage in going cell to pack. But the advantages are not as great as perceived. There's a marginal advantage. What we have with our modular design is much more cost effective for us and more flexible. It means that we can have a version of the pack which has got a few modules removed to give us the foot garage for the rear occupants. And we can also stack the pack in slightly different way when we put in our executive aircraft style rear seat variant, which is going to come in a year or so's time. So we're getting that flexibility, and that flexibility and cost effectiveness is coming from a modularity, and we're getting incredible structural contribution.
Peter, I want to go back to almost the beginning when John was asking you about why someone would buy a Lucid Air rather than buying a Model S. But you mentioned that you see your real competitor being Mercedes S-Class rather than a Model S.
Indeed.
And so my question to you is basically, you know, we have Mercedes is going to be rolling out a series of electric vehicles. The Porsche Taycan, you know, Derek, you mentioned that. There's Audi is coming out with more and more electric vehicles. Why should someone go with Lucid? You know, as you've mentioned, you haven't sold anything yet. There's nothing out there yet. Versus, you know, companies that have been around for the last 100 or more years.
Indeed. I mean, we're up against 130 years of heritage. And the ultimate status symbol, the three-pointed star, the silver arrows, no less. Are we crazy? There's always room at the top. You just have to have a better product. The first product will define you. There are countless historical examples. You know, how could Dyson take on Hoover? Better product. You know, look what happened when iPhone came out to all the others, BlackBerry, Nokia, Ericsson. There's always room at the top for a superior product. 10 years ago now, I was chief engineer on Tesla Model S. And I was being asked the very same questions. How can I possibly compete with BMW? It's impossible, Peter. It's how on earth can you do it? You've got a fraction of the budget. You've got 10% of the engineers. I had 150 engineers on Model S vehicle program. I should have had 1,500. BMW would have 1,500. You've got 1/10 of the number. You've got 1/10 of the budget. You can't compete. And now 10 years on, and let me tell you how we compete. We create the cutting edge in-house technology. 10 years ago, there was a whole group, a wave of electric car company wannabes in California. And Tesla was the underdog. Fisker was the front runner then. Fisker didn't have its in-house technology. Tesla had its core technology in-house. It had the best engineering team in the world. That's how you differentiate. And I welcome that Mercedes-Benz is coming with EQS. I think it's fantastic. I want to be compared. I want this car, Lucid Air, to be compared directly by all the magazines with Mercedes-Benz EQS. Because there will be a difference, and that will be apparent. And we have to, because we have to differentiate. The first product has to be a technological tour de force, or you're dead in the water. How can we define ourselves? Lucid will be defined by this car, Lucid Air, just as 10 years ago, Tesla was defined by Model S.
Hey, I've got to jump in right quick. Hold that thought, Rain. I know you've got a question there, but we're going to take another quick commercial break. A shout out to our good friends at Bridgestone. All right, we're back, and it's your turn, Rain.
Thank you. I guess it's a dual question for both Peter and Derek. As this video continues to stay up on YouTube, by the end, thousands of people will have watched it. Presumably, there are some future buyers of the Lucid sitting and watching this video. My question for Peter was if you could sort of describe who you think that person is. And my question to Derek is, it's become sort of trendy in at least 2 American car design studios I visited to start designing with archetypes. They lay out a personality. This is the type of person we're designing this vehicle for. Do you do anything like that? Can you envision who the Lucid buyer is as you're designing?
Sure. Yeah, sure. You know, literally within my first week of coming to Lucid, we built out what we would consider our consumer personas. And that was really to try and get in the head of these these people that either have already bought electric or changed over to electric, or more, and quite frankly, more importantly, is how do we get the 98% of target customers that aren't yet there, and why are they not there? What is missing, and how do we entice those consumers? And so we start very early on. Obviously, you have your traditional demographics of age and income, but more importantly, it was about kind of design focus and perspective on the future, sustainability, digital technologies. Are these consumers digitally native, or are they more traditional? So we really had to map out a series of different personas to understand how we get the most cutting edge kind of consumer, which is really the tastemaker, early adapter type, but also create a pathway to perhaps a more traditional conservative consumer that is a little bit more apprehensive about getting into an electric vehicle, and how do we draw those customers in? So we did a lot of that kind of core customer, middle customer, and then outer ring of customers, and understand and build those personas in a way. And I think what we've done with the design of the vehicle, the user experience and digital side of things, as well as things like our materials and packages and the different trims that are available, as well as the pricing and performance options of the car. All of that has been designed thinking about those layers of customers.
We've got another question here from a viewer who's watching. I'm going to butcher your name, Michael. Michael DeB, I hope I'm pronouncing that somewhat close, says most EVs have a flat floor, but the Air has a long tunnel down the middle, particularly near the back seats. He's wondering why you have a tunnel.
We have a tunnel right at the very front where we store extra cells. I didn't see that the flat floor is very useful at the front of the car. With our extended range battery pack, we don't have a tunnel at the rear. I think it's very important not to have that tunnel at the rear. But with our long range battery pack, which has got the cutouts for the footwell, we need to connect the bit of the pack which is left behind underneath the rear occupant seat with the rest of the pack, and that requires just a small connection, which is very low. It's nothing like a proper transmission tunnel at all. So you get 99% of the advantage of no tunnel at the rear, and I don't perceive not having a tunnel at the front to be an advantage. In fact, if you look, we did a flat floor for Tesla Model S, and most of those cars have got some sort of an assembly, a plastic assembly for stowage in that space anyway. And so by using that space with a small tunnel between the front occupants, that helps us get this extraordinary range.
Peter, you mentioned at the top that this weekend you'll be at one facility and that Derek will be at another facility in Beverly Hills. I'll pour you. Tell us about the go-to-market strategy that you guys have, and what is one going to find when they go into a Lucid store, facility, studio, whatever you call it?
You're going to see this. It's a wonderful experience. It's rich, it's arty. You see the car in its natural environment, in a California-inspired design sensibility. Eric?
Yeah, I mean, we worked from day one. We knew that through our persona research and our target consumer, we knew that we had to make a great online experience. So we put a lot of effort into our website to make sure that people get immersed in the car experience. They see all of our technologies. We've also built up an incredible online configurator, which is really inspired by gaming. So it's a lot more detailed. You can interact with the car. The rendering quality is incredible. There's really nothing else like it on the market right now. So we want to really immerse customers online as digital as possible, and give customers the opportunity to reserve and order their vehicles online as streamlined as possible. Then we've got these studio spaces, which again are supposed to be a little bit more tactile and in person. We have all of our key technologies on display, so it's a bit more experiential. People can see the battery pack, they can see the motor inverter, and our Wunderbox, our charging box, in person. So there's a real kind of immersion into our technologies. We also have all of our material packages on display, so they can learn about the different trim options and touch and feel. And then lastly, we have our virtual platform. So if you configured online, you can take that configuration and then experience that with virtual reality goggles right there at the studio space, and see the car from the outside, compare different colors, different packages. You can then sit in the vehicle and see all of our different trim packages that way as well. So it's meant to be a nice balance of the digital experience as well as a physical experiential experience in the studios.
And it's great because it also allows anyone doubting our technology to come and actually you can touch it and feel it for yourself and come in and take photographs of it. Everything's on display here.
Hey, we're at the top of the hour, and I just want to make sure that we don't step all over your guys' time. Derek, can you go a little bit longer with us, or do you have to go?
Sure. No,
okay, Peter, same thing?
I can do 5.
Okay, good. We'll go a little bit longer there. There's a lot to talk to you guys about. Rain, I'm sure you've got another question.
I've got plenty. So Derek, when you first got to, I believe you started off with the Porsche internship and then Audi. You're this kid from California. Now all of a sudden you're working in a German auto design studio. I want to know what kind of culture shock there might have been. I know this is, I guess, the mid 90s by that point, and what it was like working for German brands versus a Japanese brand, although that was in California, versus what you're doing now.
That's a great question. I think, and this is probably why I got the job in the first place. I was pretty studied in my German car enthusiasm, meaning that, from an early age, probably 9, 10, I was pretty obsessed about kind of Porsche, Audi, Volkswagen, BMW, and that was pretty ingrained in me in a young age. And so I knew a lot. I knew the history. I knew, at least I felt I had a strong hand of what I thought made a German car great. And from a design standpoint, at least, but also just from a complete package. And I felt like that enthusiasm and passion for that, as well as in general, Audi, I was really into the kind of Group B rally racing in the 80s and the other Audi efforts in IMSA in North America. So I had all that kind of bouncing around in my head, and that was what I was focused on from a design standpoint and just being part of that. So I think it was the connection and really, quite frankly, a designer's not properly educated about design until they actually do their first couple of projects. The design schools can only get you so far. It's that toss you in the deep end in the production studios, and there was no better foundation for that experience than Audi at that early 90s period, in my opinion.
Okay. And then Peter, I have to ask you this because I can't imagine that you are able to come up with what you came up with for Lucid without the Tesla experience first. Oh, yeah. You're working, obviously you're a Briton, you're working for Lotus, you're working for Jaguar. These are extremely strong British brands, the most British thing possible, perhaps. Now you come to America and you're working at this crazy startup called Tesla. Are engineers just engineers and it's all the same, or was it different?
Well, I mean, the wonderful opportunity I had at Tesla was that I inherited virtually no engineers. There were like 6 people, and I was asked to. It was part of my job to build Tesla engineering, vehicle engineering. So I personally recruited and interviewed each and every one of them. And I must have, whilst we were doing Model S, I must have done 600-700 interviews, and I grew the team from about the initial 6 to about 150 people. Over a 3-year period. And the interesting thing was I really felt we had a world-class engineering team. I picked the best and the brightest, twisted their arm to come and join on this crazy project. And no one was giving us a hope in hell. And we were dismissed. And it's interesting, there's an observation. Tesla didn't have any experience designing cars. Well, Tesla, the company, didn't, but the engineering team were brilliant. I could never have done that at Jaguar because I would have inherited the existing workforce. And I was able to not just recruit the best and the brightest, but create a methodology to do a car in a very lean and scrappy way, in a very accelerated manner, through real hands-on engineering overview, oversight, and very close collaboration, and using all the digital tools in a more advanced manner, not just the CAD, the computer-aided design, but all the simulation tools, advanced aerodynamics simulation, crash simulation, in a very cohesive manner on our own intranet. And that's the difference. It was that loving attention to detail, that hands-on oversight, and the quality. There's no one person designs a car. It's a huge team effort. And what we've really done here at Lucid is take that to the next logical step. Again, I've managed to twist brilliant people to come and join me on this crazy vision. And Mr. Jenkins is a great example of that. It's like, Derek, come and let's go and do this crazy car project. He said, well, that breaks all the rules. I said, come on, you can do it. And he's done it. Look at this. It's wonderful. And I've got brilliant air. I mean, my lead air assist got the coefficient of drag 0.21, left 4 World Championship seasons at Red Bull as lead aerodynamicist at Red Bull Formula One team to join us, gave up Formula One, said, I want to do a road car. That's going to change the world, not going around in circles. I'm putting words in his mouth, but that's the way I feel about it. I've got brilliant people modeling on computers just upstairs from me now. And we're taking the laws of physics, where you're looking at an atomic and molecular level where the electrons flow, and building up from the fundamentals of science to how can we optimize electric powertrain and this technology, including all the software, but in a manner which is imaginative, and I'd like to think where the whole is greater than the sum of the parts. And the best example of the whole being greater than the sum of the parts is the space concept, because we've used the miniaturization, the racing technology in our battery pack, and all this stuff, and the over 900 volt architecture to reimagine what a car can be. And the result is that behind me. And I just hope passionately that this is going to move the needle, that more people, for far-sighted people, will switch to sustainable mobility. And we don't need state incentives. We don't need federal incentives for this car, because it's going to be the best and it'll sell itself. And I hope that the public and prospective customers will fall in love with it. That's my passion.
Peter, I'd like to pick up on that miniaturization, and this is a prelude to a question for a viewer. You had talked about using this miniaturization in smaller cars,
yes,
which makes all the sense in the world. Yeah, so Grid Connections wants to know, are you looking at licensing your powertrain to other OEMs?
Well, we will be. What I need to do is prove that it's not vaporware first, and we're going to do that by putting it in production, because people can't believe it's too good to be true, isn't it? And I had the same criticism 10 years ago. I remember taking Tesla Model S to Detroit or to show. Elon didn't want to go. He said, Pete, you do the press conference. I did it. And I had lots of rocks thrown at me that this was vaporware, that Model S wasn't real. And it's a real sense of deja vu. 10 years on, I'm trying to needle, and I'm getting the same criticism. And look, I take it all on the chin, because I think that skepticism is healthy. We've got to prove that the technology is real. And the only way we're going to do that is put it in production. And there's, the buck stops there, and it stops with me. We're going to put this in production, and everyone's going to see, oh my God, this is real. And that's going to happen. Then I would like to license it. Yeah, absolutely. Because if what the world needs is, we've addressed range anxiety with over 500 miles. The big barrier, obstacle to widespread mass consumer adoption is the price of entry for electric car. And that's dependent upon a number of factors. And I think there's a myopia about battery price, because battery price is just dollars per kilowatt hour. You need actually to think, it's not really dollars per kilowatt hour that determines the price of ownership of an electric car. It's dollars per mile range of that car. How much does it cost to make a 200-mile range car? How much does it cost to make a 150-mile? So you need to divide the cost in terms of battery costs, dollars per kilowatt hour. You need to look at the quotient. That's the numerator. You need to divide it by the denominator, which is efficiency. How far can I go per kilowatt hour? So you've got battery costs, dollars per kilowatt hour, divided by efficiency. How many miles can I go per kilowatt hour? And then you get dollars per mile. And that's what's going to drive the widespread adoption of the electric car. We are really cracking the denominator of that formula, the miles per kilowatt hour. And with our efficiency, we can drive towards a car, the $25,000 car. Now, as a company, we've got to start high-end first and move down market gradually. You could say that's copying Tesla's playbook. Actually, it's a well-proven path for many businesses. Lexus started with LS400, the top of the range, and then moved down market. And there are many historical examples of that. By the time we get, as Lucid, to a level of maturity as an organization and of financial might to contemplate the level of automation and scale of factory it would take to do that car, we're talking about 8 years away. I mean, it's 8 years since Model S went into production. Only now Tesla's contemplating doing that more affordable car. And the world can't wait. I'm really worried about the environment. We've got an impending crisis on our hands. It may already be too late. And how can I leapfrog that process? We can't wait 8 years for Lucid to be that big that we can do a $25,000 car. So I'd like to license it to other automakers who are behind the curve. I think that all the world should benefit from the technology that we've got, but I want to first prove that it's real and get this car in production, because words are cheap. Until we've done that, we haven't proved anything. And then next year, I'd like to have dialogue with the world's automakers who are behind the curve and really help them in this transition, which is inevitable.
So Peter, when are people going to get the Lucid Air? When is it going to be available? And that factory that we saw the pictures of, how many units can that factory produce?
Okay, so spring next year, Lucid Air is going into production. Pre-production run starts the end of this year. We'll have a few months of pre-production, fine-tuning the process so we get great quality. Spring next year, it's going into production. We hope to be able to make 8,000 or 9,000 vehicles throughout the course of 2021. Our factory's purpose-built. I believe it's the first purpose-built EV factory in North America, although others are coming, and that's great. But I think ours is the first. We started the construction there only December of last year, and we got cars, albeit beta prototypes, coming down the line just 9 months later. That factory is phase one of a 4-phase plan we have for that 500-acre site. So we've just completed phase one, and that's good for 34,000 units on three shifts. We're going to implement phase two of the factory to get that up and running for 2023, and that will sync with the arrival of Project Gravity, our SUV off-air platform, at that site. And phase two will be good for 85 to 90,000 units. Look, that site can make very nearly 400,000 units a year, and we're going to max that out by about 26. But right now, that little phase one of the factory is good for 34,000 units a year.
Hey, look, you guys have been extraordinarily generous with your time. I know we've got to wrap this up because we could go on, but you two have a car company to go run.
I realized I've got to go.
Yeah. Derek Jenkins, thanks so much for your time today. Brilliant insight. I love what you were talking about, especially on the aerodynamics. Peter, same thing. I'm coming out of the show with a greater appreciation of what you're all doing, especially because of the technology that you're bringing here. I've always said that no new car company can survive unless it brings something new to the party. If you're just going to do what everybody else is doing, lots of luck. I don't see you getting anywhere, but I'm very impressed by what you're all talking about.
Thanks so much.
Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate your time, you guys.
Really enjoyed
And
it.
Rain, it
Thanks,
was good
Gary.
to have you on. We'll
Good to see you again.
definitely have to have you back on the show when we get into more
sure.
design issues.
It'd be
That
my
would be great.
Really
Thank
good.
you, Rain.
Thank
Thank
you.
you all.
Thank you.
Gary, see
Appreciate
you
your
next
time.
week.
Okay. See you, John.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Autoline After Hours is brought to you by Hyundai, Bridgestone Tires, your journey, our passion, and by Borg Warner, propulsion solutions that support a clean, energy-efficient world.
Visit our website, Autoline.tv, where you can watch us live Thursday afternoons. Get your daily fix with Autoline Daily and in-depth analysis and interviews with Autoline This Week. There's all that and much more at Autoline.tv.